So I got into food trucks when I got to LA. I didn't know what food trucks were, and then you catch on pretty quickly. And then I went to Art Walk my freshman year at SC, and they had this huge lot filled with food trucks, and it was incredible. And I just thought it was the coolest thing ever because like little mobile food marts. So I just kind of got into it that way, and then I started learning more about LA's particular food culture and particularly their food truck culture.
Food trucks are a huge part of just being in Los Angeles and really trying to immerse ourselves.
And I mean, it did start here, so that's awesome. So then, yeah, just like tracking the way that it's spread through, the U.S. and the world now. And they've always had like different kinds of like street food. Like I grew up around New York City, and it's just like they always had those little food cart things. But it was never like the same idea, and the idea of like that upscale food truck like thing that's going on. Foodie is one of those loaded terms. Like depending on how you say it, it could either be a compliment or an insult. And if you mean it as a compliment, it means that you're someone who really likes food and you enjoy the culture around food, and it's like nutritional value and that kind of thing doesn't mean anything when you are a foodie regardless of whatever it is. But it's like you are willing to try things that are different, you're willing to give like weird sounding ingredients the benefit of the doubt, you're willing to try food that's specific to a culture and that isn't necessarily like the mainstream food of that culture. So it's like saying you're into Mexican food and actually liking moles instead of just burritos. Foodie in the bad way is just someone who's picky, but like not in a health way, but more of like a snobbish way. And that's kind of the wrong approach to go about food, in my opinion.
I think that the key difference between a foodie and a non-foodie is that the latter is somebody who just eats food for fuel, somebody who eats just to keep a certain figure, enough energy through the day to get whatever else that person needs to do done.
We don't need to be eating the things that we're eating because food is technically for sustenance only, so like we don't have to enjoy it.
Whereas a foodie really eats as a hedonistic experience and really takes a lot of pleasure in the consumption process, and an advanced foodie will even get to some cooking technique, try to parse the differences between one hamburger and another hamburger maybe. It becomes more than just the food. The whole experience of eating it is what makes the foodie happy.
I got blueberry lavender ice cream. I'm like really excited right now. Wait, they have bubblegum cookies and lavender honey cookies? Fruity Pebble.
What drew you to this truck?
Because I love ice cream and cookies more than anything in the world. Anything.
Okay.
Hi. The life is very good. You should get one.
And you like learning about food outside of just eating it. And you're willing to appreciate the history and the labor that goes into developing and consuming these foods.
People are interested most in taste. Presentation and technique can go into how you perceive that taste, but there's still something very satisfying about a perfectly cooked carnitas taco for like $1 off a lonchera truck. And that will make me, the foodie, happy. And I don't need to necessarily go to Mas Malo downtown and pay $6 for a taco plate in this super hip reconstructed jewelry store. As much as that restaurant was good anyways, they're both still awesome eating experiences. And I don't think that to prefer one over another is what defines a foodie. To enjoy the eating is what defines a foodie.
I mean, in general, I like different kinds of foods, and it's not that I'll eat anything, but it's just like I'm a little more adventurous than most of my friends are. Like, I have nothing against raw fish, but I still refuse to eat raw meat. Like, beef tartare scares me shitless. But yeah, I don't know if it makes me more inclined, but it does make it sometimes easier. Plus, I had never heard of Korean Mexican fusion food until I stumbled upon Calbee Food Truck, and I thought that was really cool, and it still is really cool and really delicious.
I often have huge amounts of internal conflict when I'm at a restaurant or looking at a menu in general, trying to decide just one thing to eat. If I could, I'd want to eat a little bit of everything, really. And so that's why I like the taco, because I can get maybe 2 or 3 or 4, maybe even from one taco from each different truck, and they're all different styles. Sometimes this is really bad. Sometimes I like to call them white people food trucks. And to be honest, those are mostly where I patronize, just because I don't think that there are a lot of actual ranchera trucks around USC necessarily. They're more in strictly working class areas. Like when I went to American Apparel one time for a warehouse sale, and there was a truck out there because, of course, it's a giant sweatshop, and they employ a lot of workers, and that's what they're gonna do for lunch. And there's not a lot of real restaurants in an industrial area like the warehouse district. The difference between the gourmet white people food truck and the original taco trucks is that the former really use social media very effectively to generate a buzz. They use Twitter, they have heavy website promotion, Facebook pages to really get people to follow the trucks, to build a brand, and to create this sort of image where you want to chase the food trucks. And you can say, oh, I ate there once. Have you seen it? Has it come by you yet? Whereas the taco trucks don't necessarily do that. They just hang out on their corners that they've always hung out on, maybe changing locations less, or maybe only once a day. They don't necessarily advertise other than a phone number on the side of the truck.
I usually just follow them on Twitter, because that's like where they usually update their locations most often. For the ones I really like, I'll follow them on Facebook.
It was a little bit harder to find a schedule. I wasn't even necessarily on Twitter at that point, and I was really just discovering the intersection between social media and trucks, and how it could be a little bit less of a surprise what trucks were out there if I just looked in advance a couple minutes before.
And then some food truck areas have their own Twitter accounts, and then they'll list what food trucks are there.
But on the other hand, some of the surprise of seeing what trucks were around on the way to and from school was part of the fun.
Like, I'll read some lists and then take that into consideration when I go to places, but it's also like, what do I want to eat at that given moment? And that will also dictate a lot of times what I'll be eating. And also if the truck itself is cool. Like, there's this one like fruit and yogurt bar one where they just have like this beautiful little truck, and they have these like cute little yogurt and fruit popsicles, and they're delicious, and you know, the people on the staff are just super friendly, and I don't remember the name, but it was good. It was at Artlook a couple of months ago.
How else does this truck go?
Oh wow, the furthest that it's ever gone was last week to Las Vegas, but pretty much here in the Los Angeles area.
And do you guys have one? Would you like to be in it? Yeah, hey. Okay, and so which parts of LA do you go all around, or like what's the plan?
Cerritos, downtown, Abbot Kinney, like any place that has a festival, you know, we'll be there.
Okay.
The thing with food trucks that makes them so much more interesting as a culture is that each truck is really distinct, whereas halal carts and that kind of thing, they generally are pretty uniform. I mean, it's like those bacon hot dog vendors. It's like, it's not necessarily anything particularly standout save for the food itself, and the food itself is awesome. But there's nothing that really distinguishes one cart from another, except for the ones that develop like cult-like reputations, of which there are some, but it's like every food truck has its own cult.
I get pretty excited about Kogi because Kogi never comes around the USC area. But mostly my food truck consumption is around campus, I'd have to say. If I'm going to a place in another part of the city, then I'm usually going to be pretty excited about trying new restaurants that are in that part of the city that I wouldn't be able to try otherwise.
The brick and mortar experience is just more formal always, because you're sitting down, even if it's like you're eating in versus taking out at Mickey D's, like you're making the effort to be there and like experience that food in that particular setting, which makes it sound so much more like epic than it actually is. Unless it's like one of those restaurants where you walk in and you're the only one who's you. Like, and there are places in like very like minority populated neighborhoods, and it might be intimidating to like walk into a tofu house in Koreatown just by yourself versus getting you know, like Korean barbecue plate from a food truck.
I don't think that the real foodie refuses to stop trying out new ethnic neighborhoods and trying out new restaurants just because of the food truck craze.
Like, suck it up and go eat it.
Yeah. No foodie's gonna be patient enough to wait for the right food truck to show up at the right time.
You know, there are instances in which a food truck can come to you, and you can't do that with a brick and mortar. So like there are restaurants that I want to go to in LA that I haven't been able to go to just because they're way too far out of any like way for me to get to them. But with food trucks, it's like if I see one that's swinging by where I'm already going to be, then it's like, okay, like I can meet them there.
You follow the food truck. You do not demand the food truck come to you. It doesn't really work that way. They control the conversation.
My favorite food truck was at Food Truck Alley, and I had a job interview in Santa Monica. So I was like, hey, can I come between these hours? And they scheduled me, and I got there and got myself a banh mi sandwich, and then did my interview.
Food trucks being a good gateway for people to try new foods, I think will encourage restaurant business. Ultimately, once these new customers decide that they like these certain new cuisines. I think what worries me more are, like I mentioned before, trucks like the Melt Bus, where they're built up really corporate and they're transplanted here and they're not of the community. They just kind of show up. And the thing about the Melt Bus that differentiates it from other food trucks is that it started as a brick and mortar operation in San Francisco, in the Bay Area. It's really a child of tech and funded by Kickstarter and all that, rather than something that existed, how do I say this, from organic entrepreneurship in the way that we'd understand it, people saving up to buy a truck on their own to stick to a certain neighborhood. The Melt's really become a California franchise now with the expansion of the Melt to Los Angeles, with both its brick and mortar in Hollywood and the trucks that roam the city.
I totally thought I was gonna go to the juice truck and get like a nice bottle of juice, and I walked away with this. And I was like, "Where's my drink?" And she's like, "This is your drink. Take your shot with you." I'm like, "How am I supposed to drink this?" She's like, "Well, you just drink it all in one go. Don't mix it or anything like that." And I'm like, "Guess how much I paid for it? $4.35. $4.35 for a little bottle, and I feel like the biggest idiot. I don't know what to do. That's all I got."
Okay, I'm gonna see the people who are in line for it right now, right behind you. That's how many people are in line for this truck.
So I don't know. And they're more expensive. Like they get way more expensive. But I don't know how much bigger the drinks are.
Like with any like ethnic food restaurant or like restaurant of a food that's not of American culture, you know, you always have to deal with the idea like, oh, is this what people in that country would really eat? And to some extent, it doesn't matter because you're eating it here. Fusion food isn't exclusively like delegated to just food trucks. But so like the case for it is just like if you can do it in a way that's like authentic isn't the word that I'm looking for because it's kind of a loaded term when it comes to food. But it's like if you can do it in a way that like that references and honors, I guess, the food cultures that you're drawing from, then I mean there's no problem. Korean Mexican fusion food, when done correctly, is awesome because like you can recognize the elements in each other that are that, but they are like it wouldn't necessarily fit in either culture, and that's why it has to be fusion.
I think that the real historical moment where we went from taco truck to gourmet food truck was with the inception of Kogi. I think that it would have been before I got to Los Angeles, like 2007 or 8. But I wouldn't, and that's a fusion truck. It's delicious, and its prices are probably a little bit higher than your average taco truck. But on the other hand, I wouldn't necessarily call it bad or even reappropriation because Los Angeles is such a melting pot of cultures. That's a really cliche word and phrase, I know. But it's pretty true that if you look at the guy who started Kogi, Roy Choi's background, he's a Korean American, but he grew up living the really Los Angeles life, just eating tacos on the regular, because that's what everybody does. And fusion is a pretty natural thing if your life is a fusion of experiences anyways. it's very hard to talk about what's authentic in Los Angeles, and I would have to say that Korean taco truck is pretty authentic with respect to Los Angeles. You can really only get it here, and it's authentic to this place and this time and this particular combination of immigrant communities. It's pretty cool.